Okay, now let's see how we can take care of the having that gradient that will allow us to control the intensity of this distortion and making sure that the tips, the extremities of the line don't get affected as much or anything at all. And the way we're going to be doing that is by making use of that curve U attribute that we have along the line. As I mentioned before, that curve U attribute isn't on this list, so we need to get it some other way. There is a node specifically for that inside point_vop, which is a bind. So let's type bind. And this bind, you just type the name of the attribute that you want to grab, curve U, and then we can work with it. We can make a quick experiment. Let's, for instance, connect the attribute to our color attribute, color output, and we should see that gradient happening. Okay, so we have black, so we start at 0 and it grows all the way up to 1. Now, we're not going to be using this for the color, of course, so let me just disconnect. So I'll hold Y and click and drag. But what we're going to be doing is actually using this curve U and remapping this value. We'll be using a ramp parameter, and we'll just type ramp, and you see we have here ramp parameter, and let's give it a name. So let's say ramp amp. That way we know it's the ramp for the amplitude. Or I'm going to say here ramp amplitude ramp. Remember that the label is what's displayed and the name is it's how we can actually refer to the parameter. Now I'll give it this, so it requires an input. We'll give it the curve U data, and then we can define the remap it based on a color ramp, or we have the option of going with a spline ramp. A color ramp will return a color, while a spline ramp will return a float. For now, we just need a float. Once you have a parameter, you can't really adjust it here. You need to go out to the VOP, to the point VOP, and this is where you'll be able to adjust the parameter. Okay, so we have amplitude ramp here. Let's dive inside. This is just the default ramp. Now, we have this distortion, and all we need to do is make sure that before we add this value to our current position, we multiply that value by our remapped curve U value, by our amplitude ramp. So let's create a multiply, and let's multiply our distortion vector by this amplitude. And then we'll connect this, and this is what we're going to be adding to the position. Immediately you can see that it got flat, everything got flat. And the reason for that is because if we go up, let's press U, you'll see that our ramp by default is at 0, completely at 0. What we want is, we want 0 on the edges, but let's create a point in the middle and bring this up. And as you can see, we get the desired effect. Right now, if we move this, you'll see that our the distortion that's being applied to the line is being multiplied by this ramp, meaning that the edges have 0 distortion and everything else will have this gradient. Of course, this is kind of a linear transition, not a very interesting one. So let's right click on this point, set interpolation for something like Bezier. Let's use get more ROM, probably might be a better option. So let me switch this to get more ROM, and here get more ROM as well. So it's going to give us kind of a nice curvy transition. We can add as many points as we want, okay? That's fine. So if you want things to be a bit sharper, we can do something like this. This is fine. Okay, so we have the effect, the desired effect. Now let's make sure that this moves a bit more while we animate.